Hello everyone, and today I have decided that I'm going to go over the Empire at War expansion called the Republic. Now, the reason I'm planning on going over this, and specifically the Republic faction, is because I've seen a lot of people struggling with the Republic and its ships. This, in its own right, is a valid concern as the Republic is extremely hard to play and follow the Republic, but that is by nature of design. The Republic canonically was extremely outnumbered by Separatist forces and had to resort to innovative tactics by their Jedi generals and clone admirals to deal with the Separatist forces. In this video, I'm primarily going to focus specifically on each ship and what they are and what they are good at. And after I have specifically gone over each ship, at the end, I'm going to give you an overview of how to combine these strengths into one large and effective fleet that can be utilized, hopefully, across your campaigns, whether it be skirmish battles, campaign galactic conquest, or a simple sandboxy from the ground up start, which is my personal favorite. Throughout this video, I am going to look at each capital tier ship individually and look at the frigates and smaller ships as a one clump because there isn't too much to go over with them. However, towards the end, I do plan on giving a more detailed analysis of what works and what doesn't. Now that we've established our battle plan, let's go over all the ships available to the Republic at the start of a completely vanilla from the ground up campaign. So the mainline picket ships and corvettes would be the CR-90, which obviously specializes in anti-fighter, as well as a screening role for Separatist torpedoes. The Charger is a fragile yet well-armed cruiser. It has 5 light dual turbo lasers, and a medium rapid dual laser cannon, which is good for fighters as well as taking out proton torpedoes. The DP-20 frigate is also a fairly well-rounded with 3 light dual turbo lasers, 2 light quad laser cannons, and 2 light concussion missile launchers. That does make it an ideal picket ship, and it is good to pair that with our larger ships. Next up in size, we have the Architens class, an extremely popular class and one that I see used quite extensively. It While it isn't the strongest ship, it is relatively sturdy for its price as well as its size, and it can hold its own against smaller separatist ships such as the Hardcell. After this, we have the Pelta frigate and the Pelta support refit. The Pelta is an extremely good anti-fighter ship, specializing with 4 medium dual rapid laser cannons and 2 light triple turbo lasers. These allow it to effectively deal with fighters while also holding off smaller enemy ships, again, such as hard cells. Next, we have the support ship, a simple ship which can deploy interdiction mines, which is a underrated feature of its. I always tend to have at least one of these in my fleets towards the Black Lines. Next, we have the Carrot class, another durable frigate, or cruiser, I suppose, and it is also decently quick and packs quite the punch with 2 heavy turbo lasers and 2 medium laser cannons. It isn't really good at a anti-fighter role, nor is it good at a anti-capital ship role. However, it is a perfect ship to have in small numbers dotted around your fleet. Next up in size, we have the Dreadnought class heavy cruiser, an extremely popular ship which we also see utilized quite heavily in Thrawn's Revenge. It is effective at dealing with medium enemy ships, so a dreadnought or 2 dreadnoughts could very easily take on a munificent, probably, considering it has decent screening abilities as well, with 2 light quad laser cannons and 2 heavy laser cannons. Next up in size, we have the famous Acclamator line with the Acclamator 1 assault loadout, the Acclamator 1 carrier loadout, and the Acclamator 2. The assault loadout is a respectable ship considering its size and price. It has decent hull and decent shields, as well as an extremely effective fighter and bomber complement, and decent weapons with two light quad turbo lasers, two medium laser cannons, two assault concussion missile launchers, and two proton torpedoes. This allows it to do heavy damage to enemy ships, capital, and otherwise. The carrier loadout is just that, a carrier. It should not be used in the front lines, however, I have seen it being used in the front lines a lot, but it excels when it is placed in the mid section of a fleet, as it does have some weapons with two light quad turbo lasers and two proton torpedoes, and two light laser cannons for engaging fighters that get too close to it. It can hold it can launch two fighters and two bomber squadrons simultaneously. And finally, we have the Acclimator 2, which trades a lot of its hangar space, carrying only a total of two fighter squadrons, four fight light quad turbo lasers, and one proton torpedo. Personally, I always go for the Acclimator 1 assault loadout over the Acclimator 2 and the Acclimator 1. That is all of our mid-size ships. Next, we're going to discuss Republic capital ships. So next we have the first official capital ship of the Republic, and that would be the Victory 1. The Victory 1 is an extremely effective ship, boasting two light quad turbo lasers, four light dual turbo lasers, and a whopping four assault concussion missile batteries. This ship is honestly best used as an escort for the Venator, due to not only its small form factor and thus cheap building cost, but also due to the sheer damage potential the ship has. The fighters of the Venator can very easily complement the firepower of the Victory 1. So the next mainline capital ship of the Republic we're going to be looking at is the Victory 2. Another extremely powerful ship, also used or should be used in conjunction with the Venator class as well as the Victory 1. The Victory 2 also boasts an even stronger armament, however, it does lose the missile tubes, replacing them with four heavy turbo lasers, four medium dual turbo lasers, and two ion cannons. This makes it extremely efficient at dealing with enemy capital ships, and it excels in the role of ship-to-ship combat, more so than both the Venator and Victory 1. However, it does come with its flaws. Its lack of missile batteries means it won't do well against targets which are fully shielded, or targets which don't have much of a hull. However, that is made up for with the ship's relatively powerful turbo laser complement, and another potential issue is the lack of fighters or bombers. It does have one squadron of fighters, however, that is not nearly enough to deal with the separatist amounts. That is why it is generally advisable to use this in conjunction with the Venator or Acclimator carriers, and not alone. Next, we have finally arrived at the Venerable Venator class, a formidable warship in its own right, however, grossly misused, not only by the Republic in canon, yet also by players such as myself. The Republic's primary goal with the Venator was to have a dedicated fleet carrier. However, it was pushed into a battleship role, something the ship was not designed for. While it does boast substantial shields and health, its armament is lacking in some areas. It boasts a complement of 8 turbo lasers, with 4 of those being heavy dual turbo lasers, 2 light dual laser cannons for point defense, and 2 proton torpedo launchers. However, there is a distinct lack of any ion-based weaponry. That means it is extremely ineffective when fighting heavily shielded separatist ships or shielded separatist frigates. The Venator also lacks much in the way of survivability, being able to crumble easily against the firepower of larger ships such as Providences or Bulwark class or Lucrehulk class battleships as well. The Venator is a iconic and effective ship in the role it was meant to serve. However, misuse of this ship can lead to its effectiveness dropping drastically. Next, we have finally reached the battlecruiser line with the Maelstrom class battlecruiser, an extremely effective frontline brawler with 10 heavy dual turbo lasers, 5 dual ion cannons, 4 medium ion cannons, 2 assault concussion missile launchers, and 6 light proton torpedoes, plus a sizable fighter complement of 2 squadrons and 1 bomber simultaneously, and a total of 8.5. This makes it an extremely effective all-rounder, being able to dish out substantial damage as well as launch fighters to combat the numerous separatist vulture droids. The only drawback of a ship like this is as is with most large ships, a lack of point defense. This is mitigated by the fact that it does have a respectable fighter complement, as well as will obviously never be going in alone. Personally, I usually end up using the Maelstrom as my flagship, surrounding it with Venators, Acclamators, and Victories, as it is extremely effective when used in that format. The ship has good weaponry, good shields, good hull, and is maneuverable enough to be able to make quick moves to shield its more damaged side from enemy fire, something which larger Separatist ships are unable to do so, as well as larger Republic ships. Overall, the Maelstrom is probably my personal favorite when it comes to Republic ships, due to its versatility, impressive firepower, and comparatively cheaper cost. Next up, we have the first official dreadnought, or at least the precursor to a dreadnought, and that is the Praetor 1. A ship which I actually don't have a lot of love for in this form. This is not the Praetor 2, but the Praetor 1, which was made prior to the Clone Wars and thus had to be compliant with the Ruusan Reformation, which severely limited the ship's weaponry and shielding. The hull of this ship is respectable, being at capital tier and being able to take quite the beating from separatist ships. However, its complement of weapons, comparative to its size, in my opinion, is not that great. It has almost double the fleet population compared to the previous ship, which was the Maelstrom, and doesn't have that many more weapons. Personally, I would rather have two Maelstroms than one Praetor 1, and I would advise that if you have other options, not to field the Praetor due to its ineffectiveness. Not only that, it is an extremely large and bulky ship, making it a very easy target for enemy ships as they can very easily spread out their fire and still hit multiple hard points. Overall, this is probably my least favorite. Next, we have two of my second and third favorite ships, the Mandator 1 and the Mandator 2. I'm going to go over the Mandator 1 first and then move on to the Mandator 2, but in essence, the idea for both ships is the same, with the Mandator 2 being the post-Ruusan Reformation upgraded variant of the Mandator 1. And the Mandator 1, despite being compliant with the Ruusan Reformation, was still a fairly formidable ship, boasting an extremely powerful hull and very powerful shields, a strong fighter and bomber complement, and a robust armament of 10 ultra heavy turbo lasers, 8 heavy dual turbo lasers, 14 light dual turbo lasers, 5 heavy quad ion cannons, 14 light dual ion cannons, and 5 assault concussion missile launchers. Again, another issue, as with all larger capital ships, is the lack of any point defense. However, just like in the Maelstrom and Praetor, there is a fighter complement of 4 and a bomber complement of 2, with a total of 18 squadrons. So, an extremely respectable amount of fighters and bombers for a ship of this size. The ship is also obviously never going to be used alone, and instead used in conjunction with smaller ships, including ships such as the Maelstrom and Venator, which allows it to shine in its role of being a battle cruiser. Next is the proper dreadnought of the Republic, the Mandator 2, boasting an even more impressive hull and shield, even more fighters and bombers, and an even stronger armament with 20 ultra heavy turbo lasers, 22 heavy dual turbo lasers, 14 medium dual turbo lasers, 5 heavy ion cannons, quad ion cannons, and 14 medium dual ion cannons, and 5 assault concussion missile launchers. That makes their ship extremely powerful. However, it does have quite the sizable pop cap at 150, which means that there's not much space that we have to work with. However, luckily for us, screening ships such as the CR90 and DP20 only take up around 1 or 2 pop cap, so this ship alone is able to raid smaller separatist installations, such as, say, a fleet of a few Beneficent, maybe a Providence or two, but nothing more. So, all in all, I prefer the Mandator 2 obviously over the Mandator 1, but in its own right, the Mandator 1 is an extremely effective ship at slightly less pop cap, allowing you to fill in the fleet with a lot more variety. So, if you are tight on money, I would say go for a Mandator 1 and give it a fleet of smaller ships. However, if money is abundant, have multiple fleets and one Mandator in one of them. So now that we've looked at each ship individually, I have decided to bring us into the instant action mode so we can individually look at what works and what doesn't. So, in general, as I said before, let's say I take a fairly affordable Maelstrom class as my flagship. It has 34 fleet cap, which isn't too much. However, as we decided earlier, it does pack quite a punch. So with this serving as the sort of anchor point for our fleet, there are a few things we need now. We need screening ships, and we need ships to soak up the damage, as well as dish out damage. So for that, personally, I take around 4 victories in total. 2 victory 2s and 2 victory 1s. That allows us to have a good mix of turbo laser as well as simple concussion missile. This in total is 60 pop cap plus the 34 from the Maelstrom. We sit at 94 pop cap, and we already have 4 victories, which is a enough firepower for our fleet, and a Maelstrom, which only adds on to that with its heavy dual turbo lasers and dual ion cannons. Next, we obviously need carriers. And what better ship than our old friend the Venator? Having a lot of Venators cannot hurt. 4 Venators right here is 24 60, 64 fleet cap in these 4 ships. And with those 4 ships, we get 4 dual heavy turbo lasers, as we said earlier. We get their entire armament, and we get 14 fighters each. 10 times 14 is by 4. I'm not that good at math, so I'll let you figure it out. And we have a already decent fleet, which is sitting under 200 pop cap. And then for cruisers, personally, when it comes to picket ships, I like to go for the Arctisans. I usually tend to go for as many as I possibly can, keeping underneath that 200 fleet cap, with a total of 20 fleet cap in these 5 Arctisans. Then, for gunships, I personally go for a mix of DP-20s and CR-90s, focusing more heavily on CR-90s. Now, these ships, if not specifically in these quantities, in my opinion, are the simply most effective ships that we have access to as the Republic. Why is that? These ships all complement each other extremely well. For example, the Venator and the Victory, as designed, were made to work together, with the Venator providing the fighters and support fire, and the Victory providing the heavy munitions. The Maelstrom, working with smaller screen ships as well as missile boats, allows it to dish out damage while not being entirely targeted alone, as well as being protected from things such as missiles from enemy ships. A fleet like this is extremely effective at dealing with separatist ships. Because if we look at separatist ships, like for example, the most common separatist ships you're probably going to be encountering are Munificents, which are not the best ships. They have very weak hulls, very weak shields, and very little in the way of armament, with a total of 7 turbo lasers, which is less than the Venator's 8, and the Venator isn't even our mainline battleship in this fleet, while the Separatist, the Munificent, is their mainline ship. Other Separatist ships for us to look out for is the core ship, and obviously the Providence and Recusant, both of which being decently powerful ships, but nothing that none of our ships can handle, especially the Maelstrom. When it comes to fleet composition, keeping this ship safe would be our priority, because the second this ship goes down, the entire structure of the fleet collapses. So something that needs to be prioritized in space tactical battles is keeping our flagships safe. Failing to do that means our ships are relatively unorganized. So, in conclusion, what have we learned? We've learned that single ship fleets, especially as the Republic, is not an effective strategy. However, a lot of players tend to gravitate towards having a fleet primarily made up of Venators and maybe a few Architons and Acclimators spread around. This is something I myself am guilty of. I watched a lot of the Clone Wars and I absolutely loved that show. And in that show, the space battles are always depicted as single ship fleets for the most part, with occasionally the Architons or a consular class or a charger or a acclimator in earlier episodes. However, that simply is not an effective way of playing Fall of the Republic. And that's not me saying that you have to play a certain way. Play however you want. If you want to feel like you're watching the Clone Wars and living it, go for it and build a fleet of 50 Venators and throw it at a Separatist fleet. I'm sure it would win because I have tried that and it has won. But if you're looking to win, and if you're looking to beat the game, then diversifying your fleets and investing in the ships that I've looked at and told you about today is the key to winning your campaigns. And on that note, I'm going to leave it off here. I wish you all good luck in your campaigns and goodbye.